Hi, Josh. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Michelle?
I'm great. It's so funny to be on this call. I mean, funny is actually a good word to describe our interactions all the time, to be honest with you. And
Wait, because I'm funny or because you're funny?
because we're both funny, we're actually
Ah,
funny together.
right.
And so when I was thinking about, the growth of the podcast and such, I wanted to start to bring more men onto the call. And why is that? Part of the reason why is because, first of all, men have always played a pivotal role for me in my career and in my life. I get along with men really well. And speaking of which, the word funny, I mean, part of the reason why we have such a great dialogue with one another is because we banter. And I think one of the things about me is that I'm kind of like a guy's girl where we could shoot the shit together. Would you say that?
Yeah, you're very easy to talk to.
Yeah, very easy
Yes.
to talk to. And
When there's nobody else around.
true, actually, because
Yes.
when people are around, I'm kind of like a little bit, I would say probably ADD or
Squirrel.
yeah, or a lot of
Over there. Over there. Over there.
exactly. A lot of those people would call me, yes, a squirrel, where there's so many different energetic distractions for me that I tend to be spanning the room. And in fact, I actually used to be so much better when I was younger at being able to hold a conversation, maybe two, by the way, or even hold court, and at the same time pan the room and kind of make assessments on what's happening. Now, the older I get, I really can't do that. I'm just being honest. I mean, I can,
But wait, but do you prefer the one-on-one, the direct conversation like we're having now over?
I prefer both.
Okay.
I really enjoy, and especially the older that I get, I love deep conversation. Obviously, I wouldn't do what I do for a living if I didn't.
Right.
But I also love a good social interaction with a bunch of people, and going back to the word fun, right? So before we go too far into our depth of our conversation, I wanted to introduce Josh Borris, who is not only a friend of mine, but he is also he's just a beautiful soul. And what I love about Josh is, speaking of kind of being in a large setting, no matter what, he will always stop to connect with people that he loves, even when it's his own event, because he wants to make sure that that you're seen. And it's something that I love about him and that I
But
honor
wait,
about him.
but wait, sorry to interrupt. Thank you. But you're the
You can,
exact same
you
way.
can fucking interrupt all you want.
Yeah, I am getting interrupted. You're the exact same way.
That's why we're a mirror of each other.
Exactly, yes.
And that's why we get along so well, and probably why in the sea of all the preschool people, we attracted one another to each other. So Josh is also, just so that we're clear for the entire audience, if we want to look at his career, beyond all of his individual beautiful characteristics that he has as a human soul, he is an architect, he's a designer, he's a contract builder, and a real estate broker. And he's super successful on the West Side and beyond. And so when I say West Side, I'm talking about the West Side of Los Angeles. And Josh was actually raised in Beverly Hills, which is also, to be honest with you, something super unique about him, that sometimes I always want to make the assessment, being from Pasadena area or San Gabriel, for those people who are from California. Oh, those people from the West Side or Beverly Hills, they're not real. But I have to say, some of my closest friends are people that were born here, not people that transplanted, right?
But do you know why? Do you know why that is?
Tell me, because they don't have to prove anything.
Yeah, everybody that moves to LA takes on a persona of what they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that are from LA are just who they are.
I totally agree with you. I had this conversation with somebody recently who wrote this thing saying, well, sometimes I have to get out of here because I feel like if I stay in LA too long, it's fake it till you make it. And I said, well,
Yeah.
so fake it till you make it if you want to make it that way. And it's also based upon who are you surrounding yourself with, if that's what you are thinking. Because those of us Angelinos who are from here, we certainly don't feel that way. In fact, those people drive us crazy.
They do.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you're here today on Opportunity Knocks. And I picked you not only, of course, because you're a male and you're such a deep soul, but you're really good at asking me questions. I would say you're one of the people who does actually make me stop at a party and answer your questions. And I love it and hate it at the same time.
So I'm so glad. So I just want to, get this out there and put it out
Yes.
on the record
Mhm.
that you mentioned that I could ask you anything that I want.
Yeah, totally.
And everything, open, fair game.
Mhm.
And I feel like conversations that we've had, the hardest thing is actually finishing the conversation.
You're so right.
And we could
But
continue.
you can
for a
hardly
long
wait
time.
till today. Look at my hair.
Yes, I don't think we have enough time. I mean, I have to
By the
start
way,
now.
there could be a part 1 and a part 2.
Okay. Well, I wanted to start to just to congratulate. I wanted to congratulate you because I think your podcast, Opportunity Knocks, is amazing, and I feel like you've had so much success because you really put your heart and soul into everything that you do, and it really shows. And you're so authentic.
Cry already.
No, you're so authentic. I think that's really important. You are who you are, flaws and all.
Totally.
And I think that's what
And I
makes you
love that
special.
you use the word flaw right away.
Well, we'll find out. Let's find out if you have any flaws.
We know there's several. Let's get going.
This is going to be fun for me. So
By the way, that's why I chose you.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
And when you said, "Is everything fair game?" I'm like, "Go for it. Go
Great.
ahead."
Great. You mentioned a little bit that I was fortunate to meet you when our kids were in preschool together. And then I really was even more fortunate because 2008, 2009 was a really difficult time for me professionally. And I was able to work with you as a coach.
Yes.
And so I really got to see you from a different perspective. And it really helped me to focus on my values. And I know that that's a really key area for you in the work that you do, is really figuring out people's values. And you've expressed what your values are on your podcast somewhat. And I feel like maybe it's a gender thing. It's a lot harder for men to be in touch with those values. A lot of times men are more, they associate their worth with what they do professionally rather than who they are as people.
Yep.
I think you've done a great job of really promoting values, what people's values are, and helping people get in touch with those. You definitely helped me during that time period, and it was a great lesson.
You're pretty good about living within alignment of your values.
I try.
You definitely, well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for the acknowledgement. And you're right, it is a very, a big part of what I do. And I also am a firm believer in getting in alignment with one's values, male, female, anything in between, by the way. And I think the thing is that, it's not necessarily a male thing. I don't think. I actually think it's whether or not you've been exposed to the opportunity to identify and want to be open to it. And then further to buy into that that is a necessity for you to live within alignment so that you have more fulfillment or joy, right? So where we're in particular with you, I think having coached you, right? And knowing you and your family so well, sometimes what happens, I think, for men, because in generalizing, many men are breadwinners, right? Is that it's hard to live within alignment sometimes because there's obligation that comes in, or shoulds, or would, or those words, right? That I really try to avoid. So yeah, I think that's what you're kind of possibly starting to tap into.
A little bit.
So now I've got something better.
I do. Let me get started. I think a lot of people know you, or I know you as being, top 1% coach, mother, Witty Group founder, and
he's like, they're like, what's the Witty Group? We didn't know about the Witty Group.
Have you talked about that on this podcast?
A little bit. I refer to it as my very first women's group, but you can talk about it because you've lived it for years.
What Witty stands for? What? Women in Transition.
Yep. International.
International. Okay.
As we are now.
Yes.
At the time, I was thinking big.
Yes. So my original impression of that group was it was kind of a, I don't know, 10 or 15 women, close friends of yours. You guys would get together and use it kind of as an excuse to go have some fun away from your husbands and family. But
actually, I was the connector. None of
Yes,
them.
you were the connector. I
Mhm.
think you had that fun, but what I realized actually as a witness to it, on the side was that it really was a way for women to come together and connect in a very deep and profound way.
Mhm.
And you definitely were the driving force behind it and helped to kind of bring that out in everybody that participated in the group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Um,
a beautiful opportunity, but also came with a lot of trials. I mean, it's any practitioner will always tell you and always lead you astray from leading your friends, right? So, um,
so was that hard? Because a
yeah,
lot of those women were your friends?
yes, including your wife,
Yes,
who is
including my
one of
wife.
my very good friends.
Yes.
Your wife, so in general, there were 12 women in the group. As time went on, they lived across the city of LA. So some people lived in the Valley, some people lived in Pasadena, some people lived in the South Bay. And essentially, it was formed based upon, I used to do this cookie baking party every year. Long and short, I don't always tell this part of the story, but this one part of the year, because as you know, one of my values is actually community and collaboration. So we were at the cookie baking party. We brought out the tarot card, which here's my book right here. Here's my deck right here. And through the tarot, basically, we decided to hire a tarot card reader. I was with Jenny Silverstein at the time with our group, and who wasn't a group at the time. It was just a cookie baking party, and we were drinking. We probably weren't even making cookies. And then
Yeah, I don't think we got any cookies that day. But
exactly. I think we always ended up with the peppermint cookies that Cindy Davis would come along with.
Mm.
But so in the end, we did this tarot card party and hired a professional to do it. And interestingly enough, now I read tarot with my clients. And from there, it turned into a women's group because all of this stuff was flying off the wall. And again, I was the connector and I was holding space for everyone. And I felt very concerned that many people who had never had therapy didn't know how to process the information.
wait, Michelle, was there like a light bulb that just went off and you had this realization, like there's a group here and I can do a lot with this and we can really help promote people's values and help people during that time? What was it?
Well, I mean, I think you know me, like I am an idea generator, right? So
Yeah, but you followed through
but
with that idea.
for that really, it was about, so my essence is always coming from, and you shined the light on this on 4th of July when we talked. My essence is always coming from the shining the light on helping people and service. And so I was concerned, I truly was concerned. I called Jenny Silverstein in the morning and I said, I couldn't sleep last night. I feel kind of bad that like we did a bit of, in a way, group therapy without people knowing that we were doing that. I didn't know what was going to show up. And I feel like all these people have this stuff show up and they don't know what to do with the information, everyone. So really it was coming from a service component of wanting to help people.
Okay. As a good friend.
As a good friend. And then I think from there.
So you were saying that it came from a place of wanting to help, to be of service.
Yes. And I think that's me. I don't think I was aware of that or that gift until later. And particularly, I'd say that really came true in the last 5 years of launching Empower. Mm-hmm. But also there was a woman, Laura Burke, who pointed out something to me when I was a young mom with Gabby. And she has her master's in spiritual psychology. And funny enough, I ended up being her coach as well. During the transition of Little Dolphins leaving the canyon, right? The preschool that our kids went to. And she said to me one day after class, and she said, I want to share something with you. And I said, what? And she goes, I have never seen a woman build community like you. And I go, what? What are you talking about? And she goes, the way you show up every week here and the people that you congregate with, she's like, most women go to the thing that looks familiar or like attracts like. She's like, you seamlessly talk to everybody and are truly interested in them. And I said, At the time, I didn't get it. I really didn't, because I didn't understand that that was really the essence of me and one of my
Mhm.
gifts. And now I do.
Okay, so wait, hold it. Hold that thought right there. Where does that come from? Did you have community growing up? Is this something you didn't
Yes,
have and you're striving to create? Is this something you've always had in your life?
I love this
Why?
question, Josh Borris.
Thank you.
Go
Tell
get
me.
him, Josh. Go
Yeah,
get
that's
him.
right. So
Um,
no, seriously, did you have it as a kid? Did you feel like you belonged to this community? Have you
so
always
I
had
think
that?
that's a great question. Um, yes, I had community. So I am raised bicultural. My
Mhm.
father's Mexican, my mother's German. My mother came here. She escaped East Germany to West Germany and came to the States. Met my dad. He was in the army. He was Mexican American, first generation. She had no idea what she was entering into. Coming, she thought he was Italian, by the way,
Right.
and came to East Los Angeles to meet his family. And so, as you know, most Hispanic families are rather large, multiple cousins, abundance, right?
And
Abundance.
yours was large?
Mine was really large. I was around my cousins all the time. I beyond just family, we also went to church every Sunday, right? So I had a community through church. I went to a church private school, not unlike St. Matthew's, and I St. Matthew's, which is in the Palisades over here. So it's a little bit like that church school environment, right, where you kind of each bleed into the other. And then I lived in a community, and I don't think that I really appreciated this growing up, but I certainly appreciate it now, particularly when my mom got really ill and we buried her in the community that I grew up in. Um, I've been there, we go visit the cemetery a lot, and I'm constantly saying to myself, what a beautiful community to grow up in. What a gift.
So you realize that recently, like in your adulthood,
I
that you
think,
were,
like, unless you have the gift of being able to go back and visit where you grew
yeah,
up frequently, you don't always, and that's
you
if
see it
it's a
differently.
positive experience, right?
Yeah.
Have that opportunity. And so, I would go to Pasadena and go to dinner, but I wouldn't go to my neighborhood, right?
Right.
And I think when I go to my neighborhood, I'm like, how cool is it? Like, my kids don't have the beauty of being able to ride their bikes everywhere. And yes, it's a different time in life, but that community, you can still do that. And I see people do it. And so, where does that desire to serve come from? It comes from my mom, right? My mom taught us about service all the time. She was selfless. Like, she was the person that the Jehovah Witness would come to the door and she would actually sit and talk to them.
Mm.
And I would come home from school and I'd walk in the door with my friends and I'd be like, oh, hi, who are you? And she'd introduce me to the lady that would come every month to talk to my mom about God and everything. But then I think, in addition to people like that, she would give her last dime to somebody.
So she was your role model.
She was my role model. I would also say my dad, to be honest with you, also has that very big heart. He would, even for he always had an underdog mentality, right? Because he grew up not having anything. He was the man who made it out of the hood and basically supported his family and made a livelihood for his entire extended family. And that was a modeling that I saw, that, like, even when other people may not have believed in people to offer them an opportunity or a job, he would take them in. And so I think that happened in my family a lot, whether they
So,
lived with us or I witnessed it in
so
their.
you were super fortunate to be part of a community growing up. Was there ever a point in your life when you felt disconnected, that you didn't have a community there?
Okay,
You've
that's
always had it. You've always tried to create a community around you.
well, yeah. I mean, I think for me, community is one of my top values, right? So I think our friends, including your wife, will often say, how many friends do you need? Like, you don't need to keep, like, opening, there's too much you're focusing on. You need to focus on one thing. And da, da, da. Okay. But
Squirrel,
community,
squirrel, squirrel.
no, I'm not. You guys would like to think that. It's all interrelated.
Okay.
So it's all interpersonal relations. It falls underneath the same umbrella. Okay. So what I was going to say is, there's not a time where I haven't belonged to a community, because I seek community, right?
Mhm.
Whether that be transitions, leaving Mattel, not having anybody in the personal growth space, and suddenly deciding to enter personal growth and leadership training and coaching. I didn't know anybody in the arena. I didn't even talk to human resources people because, most of us ignore them. I hear your dog barking quite a bit.
Yeah. He'll stop in a second.
We'll wait for Bear.
Hold on.
He's so sweet.
I can close the door. Hang on.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Okay, that'll help. Okay.
So going back to what you were saying, you were asking, was there ever a time that I didn't feel community? I think that because it's one of my top core values, I always go and seek community, and I always look to open new doors
Right.
and opportunities for growth, right? So
But that's
professional. But
that's
I want to say one thing.
okay.
I think one thing that's important to note is while you can have community, you don't always feel like you fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that happens to me a lot. And I think people would be surprised because that's where like sort of the deep soul in me resides, right? Where depending on where I'm at in that particular growth period of time, I have to be very protective of how I use my energy because people can misuse my energy. Does that make sense?
So wait, I want to interrupt you right there because I have some questions about that.
Go ahead. I love you.
But I want to wait. I want to get through a few other things and then I'm going to come
Go
back to that.
Mhm.
How you use your energy and your awareness of it.
Mhm. But what I was going to say is, I think because I grew up half Mexican and half German, people think of me as white, right? And I look white, but I never knew where I belonged. Does that
Right.
make sense? So it's like
Sure.
going to USC. Many people will meet me, University of Southern California. Many people will meet me and say like, "Oh, you're like a typical USC girl," like based upon looks, which is
Right.
reverse judgment, by the way,
Yeah.
right? And I will often say to them, you have no idea. You have no idea how I grew up. You have no idea, like, first of all, my dad is dark Mexican, but also my cousins. Like, it's like you can never look at a person and make an assessment based upon the way someone looks.
So there's so many things that I want to touch on, and you just
Go
kind
ahead.
of opened the door to like 5 things right there.
Go ahead.
Because you tend not to judge a book by its cover. You really like to dive deep and figure things out. You've talked on your podcast many times about really figuring things out. You like to figure people out. Is that because you have felt that way? You've kind of felt part of different worlds and don't like it when people judge you based on your appearance? Where does that come from?
That's an interesting question. I think it comes from a deep curiosity. I mean, again, I think this goes back to my mom's family. They're deep thinkers. There's like philosophers in her family and professors, and my mom was a deep thinker. And I think it's just a deep love of people that really wants me to not. And I think maybe to your point, like, yeah, it does have to do not so much for me, because it's like, say if I was like black, right? Or say my dad being Mexican, right? Even though he has blue eyes or, blue-green eyes because they change colors, he probably got better treatment than some Mexicans that look darker, right? So, but he was completely, there was so many prejudices against him for being Mexican and growing up in Los Angeles and not having any money. And so probably hearing those stories, because my mom's family, although it was like after the war, so they had no money, but my mom's family came from an educated family, right? And my dad's family came from nothing. So he would constantly tell us these stories about being ridiculed and judged for being Mexican and going to these women's houses, like when he was young, not having the right car, not having the right clothes, not having, certain things that maybe would have been made it easier for him or made it allow him to be more successful earlier without having to work so hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think that's Most certainly. I mean, we used to hear it probably every dinner.
So what's your birth order?
I am the youngest of three girls.
Okay, so are
younger than
your
my
sisters similar to you in that respect?
Yes, but different. So like I would say we all are super servers, just like meaning like we again, it's within our family. We all build community for sure. Some of us bigger, deeper, different than others. I think that when you come 6 and 7 years later, right? You're meaning me, when I came, that many years later, my parents were in a different financial position. So I received certain opportunities that maybe my sisters did not, or my sisters didn't push for it, or frankly, we didn't get guidance like our children get so much guidance for colleges. It's not like my parents were like, these are the 15 schools that you're going to be applying to, and here's this tutor that you're going to, and in addition, a college counselor. And the way I ended up at USC, Josh, was frankly, I was at Marymount College, and I was sitting at in my kitchen in my apartment with my roommates, and I was applying to schools with my friends, and my dad called and he said, what are the schools you're applying to? And I was like telling him. And then he said, I think you should apply to USC. And funny enough, my roommate was applying to USC. She was from Orange County. And I said, why? We've always been Bruin fans. And he said, because they have a great network. And I think if you go there, you'll get a great job afterwards and you'll always have that network. There wasn't a strategy behind it. There wasn't by the way, I applied under business. I literally did not have the math classes to take for being in business. My dentist was on the board of, our family dentist was on the board of the dentistry school, and he was Hispanic. And he told my dad, if Michelle goes to USC, it would be the best thing for her. They are looking for more Hispanics, and it would be an amazing opportunity for her. And so then back then, that kind of nepotism that worked, which is totally different than now, obviously, as we know. It's a lot different. But he called the admissions office for my family to check in on my application. And how lucky am I, right?
Yeah.
And on the application, I was applying under business, like I said, and he said, if Michelle switches her major to something different, she'll get in, but not as a business major. And as we know, like even as parents now, you have to have exponential grades for the business school. But by the way, it's like one of the top 5 in the country for an undergraduate degree. But in addition, it's just, you have to have math. Like I hated it. I still hate it.
Hey, I want to stop you for a second because I have a couple of questions I want to insert, or I'm not going to get through my list.
Go ahead.
You talked a little bit about your family growing up, youngest of 3 girls, your mom and dad. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I didn't really have that dream.
Why?
I don't know. I don't think we were modeled it. Like, it wasn't like, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, because people have the perception that I was really directed.
Well, you're so driven. You seem so focused that I would think that's innate in who you are. That ever since you were a kid, you knew you wanted to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's an interesting thing. I was just talking to somebody about this, and they said, well, what were the expectations that your parents had for you? And I said, there were no expectations. It was like, you will go to college and you will graduate and maybe you'll get married. I mean, I'm sure they wanted me to get married and have children, but it wasn't like, you will have this career and you will get into this. I mean, again, my parents never went to one workplace that I ever worked at. So the drive is genetic, inherent in me. Both my parents were, my mom was like an academic achiever probably, but my dad was very determined and resilient, and certainly wasn't modeled that behavior by his family.
So when did that come to be? So as a child, not a lot of kids know what they want to do.
Totally.
As a kid, they kind of grow into a
I still
position
don't
just
know what I
by,
want to be. What are you talking about?
well, no, but I think you've been on a very narrow path
A
that has,
personal growth path?
yeah, personal growth. No, seriously,
Yeah.
that's really narrowed and become more clear over the years. So when did that come to light though? Because was this when you were at SC? Was this when you were working in marketing at Mattel? Did this happen after you left the corporate world and started coaching?
Well, I was a psychology major. So people
Okay.
think I was a business major and that so I picked my major because it only had 2 math classes.
So you took the easy way out.
Very strategic.
Right.
And my Spanish minor. But again, I think human behavior and the desire to serve and understand people came very naturally, right? So being a psychology major, it was a very easy fit. And I loved it. And I love to write, as you know. So it was a lot of writing. And my plan was actually to go to graduate school right away for psychology. But my mom was anti-psychology, anti-therapist, anti all of it, growing up under communism. And so she was like, you'll go get a job. And then if you want to go to get your master's in, psychology, then you can actually do that later. And I was like, okay. So, and at that time, so there's 2 sides of me, right? So at the time I was interning at Orion Pictures on Dances with Wolves and Silence of the Lambs. Okay, huge.
Oh, you're really dating yourself, Michelle.
I know, right? I'm totally.
I don't know if a lot of your audience is going to recognize those.
I don't even care.
Those
But
movies.
if they don't, then they're just DUMB, because those are amazing movies. But those were huge hits, right? They were going to be huge. We didn't even know they were going to be huge hits at the time, right? But Orion Picture folded, right? But anyway, so that being said, and I was working in entertainment PR, music though, okay? So I thought to myself, I either wanted to do music because I used to be in choir. I actually thought about being a music major. But then I had to decide between partying and cheerleading in college and showing up for my voice lessons. So when did I become more serious is really your question, because I think,
not that, yeah, I mean, but also there's an awareness back to one of my previous.
I remember, so this is again for my audience to get educated, right? So I remember going to my 20-year high school reunion and seeing my boyfriend from high school. And we were really good friends before we were dating or anything like that. I brought him into my group, the whole thing like that. And he said to me, wow, I'm really impressed by what you've done. I have to say, if I look back on high school, I always knew you'd do something, Michelle. He's like, but I had no idea. I couldn't have predicted this. And so what I would say to you is, as we parent, we look at our children and recognize parts of ourselves, right?
Absolutely, right.
For me, I was an emotional late bloomer. And I grew up in a very conservative household with rules. And so, fears attached to those rules. And a lot of times when you grow up religious, there is a lot of fear around things related to taking risk and chances. And if, depending on the household you grew up in. So I think I blossomed later, and it was based upon experience and exposure. Thank God my dad said to me, go to USC. You're going to have a great opportunity. It's going to be amazing for you. You're going to meet all these people. I mean, it was so overwhelming for me. Again, people look at me like, oh, you're white and you fit in. But it's like, you grew up here. You know what people from USC were like when we were in the 90s and in the 2000s. And I literally was like, whoa, it's like 4 generations of kids going to USC, like that much money. How are they all have BMWs. They all have Louis Vuitton bags.
so everything for you has been kind of a stepping stone on a certain path that has led you to this point right now.
Yes.
And what I feel, which I still don't know the answer to, is so who challenges you? You challenge yourself. I feel like you challenge yourself in your work, athletics. I mean, pretty much everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that come from? I mean, you're a competitive person, but sounds like you didn't have any pressure from your family growing up. You kind of tried a bunch of different things, became more emotionally aware as you matured. But who kind of pushed you into doing all these new things? You did take risk. Where did that come from? Curiosity?
I think it's curiosity, but I think it's like inherent. That's what I was saying. Like, I think nobody pushed my dad, right? And he just wanted to be successful. So like he kept pushing himself. So I guess that goes into like, what is your definition of success? And I think that has changed through the years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, for me, it's interesting. Now that I'm getting older, right? I would like to be pushed more by somebody. Meaning,
Okay. So I feel like you
going back into a workplace is because like there's benchmarks.
right, but you do that with your clients. You do that with
I do.
You do that with me when you were coaching me
Yes.
professionally. You were pushing me. You held me accountable. There were certain goals and certain exercises that we went through. So it sounds like you want somebody to push you,
Yeah.
and who holds
As a coach.
who holds you accountable?
I think that the only person that could really truly hold you accountable to getting to any goal is you. I mean, I have a team of different people that support me to get to different milestones, whether that be friends, whether that be a coach, whether that be a therapist, whether that be a yoga teacher, whether that be a healer. I mean, I seek support. That's who I am. Like, why do I like to go to workout classes or work out with somebody? Is because I like accountability. So that is like really like meaning like, even if I go to a workout, let's just use the example of a workout. Even if I go to a workout with somebody that's not as athletic as me,
Yeah, you push them.
Yes,
You push them.
it happens a lot. Like, where I'm stronger than the person, I'm faster than the person, say on the treadmill or whatever it might be. But it's like, I like to have a cocoon or a like somebody that's saying like,
your community.
yes, like try
Yes.
harder, do this, do
Yeah.
that. Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. It's funny because I feel like you have all these different sides to your personality.
Oh yeah.
You've spoken about on your podcast how what I would call like a very rigid structure you have in the morning from when you wake up. You journal, you meditate, you start the day with intention, you have a word you think of, and all these things that you do that sound so rigid and so focused, and yet
You're like, and yet
you're not very punctual. You're connecting with so many people and doing so many things all the time that I find it fascinating. You have both sides to your personality.
Yeah. Well, I think that both serve me. And so like, I think when I look at an opportunity or when I'm making decisions on what I want to pursue, it's based on how does it fit with my values and does it serve me? So I think I like to have a lot of fun. I mean, you know me, and
Yeah.
it can't be serious all the time because then I'm like, oh, can we please stop? Like, I just like don't want to talk about this anymore, right? And I'm not
Right.
avoiding, because you know that I'm happy to have like a deep conversation, or I'm happy to acknowledge my shortcomings. And I will say that yes, I am not always the most punctual person. However, I have really improved on that. And I think that part of the reason why is because of listening to how it affects other people that I care about, right? And including your wife, who is funny because like a year or so ago, I was going to go meet with a friend, and it was a newer friend, and they were like, I don't like the fact that you're late all the time. And I said, oh my God, I have a really good friend. And I could read it. Like, I was like, oh, this person's pissed,
Right.
And I was thinking about Sonia, and I was thinking like, I know for all those years, it's disrespectful, bottom line.
No, I know, but back to but
it's also like you spread yourself thin is really, I think what you're possibly wanting me to articulate is that so or sometimes people have this perception that I spread myself thin. I don't.
No, wait a minute. No, let's not get into that. We'll get there. I don't think you spread yourself thin. I think you have these two sides that there's a conflict between those two in many ways.
Yeah,
And you talk a lot about balance. Yeah, exactly. So I find it fascinating that and both sides are very strong.
yes. Like I could be like I could seep into meditation like very quickly, like,
Yeah.
and just go quiet and really, and I mean, I've been channeling the Akashic records. I've been doing a lot of really deep stuff, but then 10 minutes later, I could be like, where's the party? Let's go get
Right.
it.
Well, but I think that goes to, you brought up energy and
Mhm.
your energy and your spirituality and like your vibe. That's what I would say. Your
Yeah.
vibe. It's super positive. I feel like you do a lot of stuff for a lot of people. You definitely do try and maintain some balance, but you're always connecting between work, between family life, between everything that you do. Do you ever take time to recharge?
Yes.
And what does that look like?
I think that recharging to me, first of all, that's that time in the morning by myself that you're talking about, all that reflection time.
When you're journaling, you're meditating.
Yeah, I have to, because if I don't like to use the word have. I don't have to. I want to.
Okay.
So I set my week up very intentionally. When I see my clients, when I work on the podcast, when I have fun, when I spend time with my kids.
Wait, so you don't, uh nothing hangs over your head, things don't weigh you down in
Of course they do. Of
anticipation.
course they do.
Okay.
What are you asking?
No, keep going. I mean, well, you say you compartmentalize. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying I compartmentalize. I said I'm intentional about how I set my schedule so that I
Okay.
can breathe. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
when I say, is breathing enough of self-care? Yeah, that's one part of it. But then, I'm like, my Fridays, I definitely take work meetings. I mean, it's hard, as you know, you can't not at all. But I really try to set Fridays aside to do things for me that I want to do
So
before
so
I
you
have
say
my kids.
you say no, I can't do that. Do
Yeah,
you say that? You do?
yes,
You do?
of course I do.
Really? Okay.
Of course I do. What do you
Uh-huh.
mean?
I don't know.
Who do you think that I don't say no to?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
I think
You're such a pleaser.
I know it's a problem. It's actually gotten much better. I like to look at the positive, as you know. So I would say, yes, I have to say no, first of all. I mean, I think one thing that you and Sonia taught me a lot was, once you have 3 children, it's a very different perspective than 1 or 2, right? And I had to start saying no to a lot of things, and I had to disappoint a lot of people. I think part of it is, like, to your point about energetic exchange, I attract people into my life. I have every intention of following through on that relationship, but I can't always reach them because there's too many milestones in between, right? And then that goes into choice, right? If I spend time with this person, then I won't have time for this, right? So your original question was, do I take time for myself? Yes, I take time for myself. What that looks like is, it can be solitude. It could be me hiking by myself up on the trail.
Which I know you do. I mean,
Totally.
you do. Yeah.
I do a ton of that. Or I go, meditate in the woods down below, on a different trail over here. Or I go down to the beach and I hang out by myself for a little bit. I think different people are different. Like, I don't need a day necessarily by myself. I may need a couple hours to myself. I may need 30 minutes, like, but I also get charged by people. Like, I'm an extrovert,
Right. Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
not an introvert. And so, and I like new experiences. That feeds me. Like, why I want to make new connections and friends all the time is because I continue learning. like to me, continuing to learn through others' experiences, but also through new environments and new skills is super important for me.
So what type of learner are you? Experiential,
I'm an
visual?
experiential learner,
Okay.
for sure. I probably am kinesthetic too. I mean, but I mean, we all sort of span across a lot of learning styles, but like I'm definitely experiential. Like that's like I think there was a time in my life where like, I mean, way back when, say for example, there wasn't Google, where like I would love to sit and read the manual to figure out how to do like a certain pivot table in Excel or something, right? I don't want to do that. Like that sounds awful. Now,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
You were talking about your support system, people that support you, activities that you do that you derive a lot of energy from, and what sort of friend are you?
Hmm. I'm a very loyal, trustworthy. Um, I would consider myself a great listener. Um, and
Are you judgmental?
no, I don't like that. I actually think there was a time in my life where well, first of all, I want to clarify something. Not all judgment is bad. Judgment, if you misuse someone's trust, can be detrimental and not good. I think that judgment could also be observations, right? So I think I'm an observant friend for sure. And I think that I notice subtleties in people, like shifts, and I don't always call it out, but I notice it. And I also am one who, when I do call it out, sometimes people haven't processed it or seen it themselves. Um, I think one person in particular that will say this is like Francie Kaplan, who will probably listen to this. She would often say, "How do you know that?" Like, I don't, like she would be like, "I don't feel that way." And I'd be like, "I actually noticed something's not right. What's going on with you?" And then the next day she'd be like, "How did you know that I was feeling blah, blah, blah?" And I think that that is the clairvoyant, like intuitive in me that sees things in people. Um, that I,
And it just hit me that I think that's why you like to figure people out.
why? Because I'm clairvoyant.
No. I feel like you like to figure people out to help people, but to see those things, to kind of see those little nuggets that we may not see in ourselves,
Yes.
to figure those things out. You don't care, where somebody's from or
I do care where they're from, actually.
well, you do, but you don't care about like the trivial things. You want to get those little nuggets,
I
those
actually
things.
kind of want it all, to be
You
honest.
want it all.
I want it all. Well, there goes back to like, where are you spending your time, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, I think what you're saying is, and I do this in coaching too, I want you to know that I see your essence. I want you to know that I see you at your greatest value. I want you to know that I hold you to that level that you may not see within yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And that is part of the storytelling component of it that I think less so now. I mean, I think like when I was younger, I truly would like go into parties and or whatever it might be and really like hone in on, you know, couple. Now I kind of just like show up and sit
Does
back.
it drive you crazy if you can't figure that out in someone? If you have trouble reading that?
No, why?
Doesn't?
It just is. It just is. And by the way, I don't think I've ever not been able to figure it out. I mean, I might have a difference of opinion of how I saw it versus other people. Um, but I don't think I've never not figured it out.
What about the delivery? There's a right time and place to say something. Are you good about when you share those observations?
I have a belief system around that you may never get that opportunity again.
That's interesting.
So perhaps it's important to share, and in the way you choose to share, might be different as far as your delivery goes. Um, and I think that has actually allowed me to have opportunities because I have not been afraid to ask. And I think when I was younger, I used to be afraid to ask for the opportunity.
So you don't hold back, which I really like about you, and I appreciate that.
Mhm.
But it also, in many ways, I think of you have great self-confidence
Mhm.
because you don't hold back, and because you're honest and you say what comes to mind, and you call it
I'm
like it
direct.
is. But I mean,
But by the way, imagine I actually do withhold. So imagine what's really going
I
on.
can't even imagine.
Beautiful mind.
I cannot imagine that. It's probably a small little tiny fraction of what's in there.
Exactly.
But where does all that confidence come from? Has it always
Uh,
been there, or it's just
no,
over the years?
I mean, can I say like I guess at some point you just don't give a fuck anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, what I would
But
say,
you do. No, but you do. You care too much. You do. I don't think that's honest.
mm,
I don't think you're being
um,
honest.
okay, gee, no, just kidding. No, what I would say is, of course I care what people think, but I don't nearly care what the way I used to at all. And I actually, I don't know. Like, I think the confidence comes from experience. And I think the confidence comes from addressing the fear and not being afraid to step in. And I think that the more that I did do that, the more that I realized that people receive me and for who I am, and that my energy is infectious. And that when I walk into the room, because I work on myself a lot, I have an energetic aura that people are attracted to, right? So I think that I don't get afraid anymore. I just try. I mean, you can't get everybody to like you, by the way,
Right.
and you don't need everybody to like you, you know?
Right.
Those who
Yeah.
like you will come, and those who do not, it was meant
Oh
to be.
well. Yeah, it's
And they
true.
may come back around later.
That's true.
It's out.
I'm always curious. Uh, I feel like you
But I
learn more
became
from.
confident really because of just like honestly, it is years of experience.
Yeah. Right. Definitely. I feel like also
Can
a
I
lot
say
of
one
times.
thing about that?
Yeah.
So I can remember actually going to go work at Mattel and being so intimidated and feeling like, oh my gosh, like I really stepped in here and I'm working with all these super brilliant people and I don't know where I fit and am I smart enough? Am I good enough? You know. And I remember my calling my sister and saying, oh my God, I don't think I could do it, you know? And she was like, I want you to remember who you are. I want you to go in there and show them who you are and believe in yourself and you stand up for yourself. And subconsciously, I was tapping into understanding what my gift was. And my gift was connection. I had to actually figure out how to read each person so that I could insert myself, right? Because nobody was there to train me. Nobody was there to give me any guidance or really befriend me because everybody was super like competitive. So, yeah, I would say like that took a lot of balls, you know, and in addition, um, you know, I can remember also like, you know, I used to have to make a lot of presentations because I was in advertising and obviously in entertainment too. But the presentations we did at Mattel were not unlike anything I've ever experienced. So I always know I'll always be prepared. Like it was hundreds of people in a huge showroom and with turns and actors and all this stuff. And I can remember going to the bathroom before my presentations and being like in the bathroom stall going, all right, you got this, girl. We got it. Let's go. So, you know, often I show up as Miss Confident, right? But beneath that deep confidence is also this vulnerable, sweet girl who just wants to be seen and accepted, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Like most people. I think it's the
Yeah,
same for most people. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I
Um,
totally remember that being like,
yeah.
holy shit, I better, and before I throw up, or before I pee my pants or whatever it is, I better like go to the bathroom, get my shit together and come back out.
Yeah. A lot of people learn more from their mistakes than than their successes.
Mhm.
What about you? Have you had many failures? And what lessons have you learned from them?
I mean, I'm sure I've had a number of failures. um, I'm trying to remember what some of them, where I'm like, oh, you really screwed up on that.
I mean, like in how
I mean,
you said something.
I've had a lot of failures. I mean, like, again, we go back to that word judgment, right? Or self-judgment. And, I could look at things like, I mean, is it a failure that I didn't get my director title before I quit Mattel when I was waiting for my promotion? No. I mean, do I think about it? Maybe not. I mean, not that much.
I mean,
anymore.
after all these years, it probably doesn't
Who gives
matter,
a
right?
shit,
Yeah,
you
who gives
know?
a shit? Right.
But I mean, other failures, I mean, they're, like, I mean, I think could I have gone to a different school or got better grades or got my MBA and
But I don't consider
none of
those
that.
failures.
Those are dumb. Those are
Yeah,
they're
I don't
it's not a
consider those
failure.
failures.
It's not a failure. Like it's just like I don't know. I don't look at it as failure. I look at things as experiences. Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
you don't think in those terms.
No, I just look at it as like maybe it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, but look at what you got out of it. I can't even think of a true quote unquote failure. I mean, I don't know.
Are you hard on yourself?
Yeah, very hard on myself. People have the perception of that I'm very easygoing and that I'm easygoing and like relaxed and that I'm okay with like not missing deadlines or that I'm okay with like not completing something or whatever. And that's not the case. I mean, I'm very hard on myself. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish everything that I have done so far with very little resources if I wasn't goal driven and I wasn't resilient and determined. And I think that at the same time, I have to be realistic. And I say this to my tiny team a lot, where we're not curing cancer. It's okay if the blog post goes out like next week. But what I would say is when you use the word like, are you hard on yourself? The word that comes up for me is integrity. Like one of the things that drives me crazy right now about our society is people don't have the committed integrity always anymore to their work. And I'm generalizing, but I'm saying like what you and I would have considered acceptable. And I'm not saying go so crazy that you need to get yourself sick like I did or other people in our generation did. But if you say something, do it. Mean it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it and it's not possible, then call or write the person an email.
Right.
But have the courage to have hard conversations. Because that's the thing that I find is driving me bananas right now. People refuse to talk to people about things and because it's hard or they don't want to express their feelings or whatever it is. Have a hard conversation, get it out, and then at least each person understands and then they can move on, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
saying you need a pretty box for closure because that's not the reality of life either,
Yeah. I would say, it's funny, this chat brings up a lot of adjectives in my mind about you. Some I'm biased and I have already developed those opinions. But some, like besides, connector, I definitely think you're a communicator. You're somebody that does communicate and communicates very well and effectively.
Thank you.
But I also think in order to be a good communicator, people have to be receptive to what you're saying.
Yes.
And do you find that sometimes you're working with clients or you're trying to, make connections among different groups of people where they're not receptive?
Yeah, I think that's a way of life.
How do you break through? How do you get to them?
I love to find the common point with a person. So I think whether that, I was just at an event yesterday where I walked in, and funny enough, I ended up knowing through other people, like it was like, they're not my friends, but I'm like, one woman said, I've been to your event before. Another woman knew a common friend. And you don't know how people are going to receive you. Right. And so I had this conversation and this exchange with this woman where I could tell she was having a hard day. And I so badly wanted to connect to her. But the word that comes to mind is lean back. And I've been practicing more yin, and which is more softness, more feminine energy, leaning back instead of like probably the parts of me at some different parts of my life may have seen it, named it, kind of maybe waited the first half hour and then said, are you having a good day? Whatever. But I waited, and I could tell her receptivity was waning with me, like she didn't know where her trust was, right? And I connected to her at the end of the event in a way where she felt seen. And I think that was a really beautiful gift for her and a beautiful gift for me, because what I said to her and shared with her was, when you walked in the room, I felt your energy. And now, having heard you share, I can tell you're really, like, sometimes when you're so knee deep in a project, your intensity's there, right? And you're a strong person. I said, when people receive you, they receive your strength, but they don't see your vulnerability. And even strong people need to be held. And she said, yeah, thank you so much for seeing me. And I said, well, the reason why I see you is because I see myself. Mm-hmm. We're a reflection of one another. And often when I'm in that intensity mode, the vulnerability and the softer side of me doesn't show. And so, she appreciated that I acknowledged her. And, then that's where the trust came in. But again, going back to that observation, getting curious about somebody, not judging it, but like observing it.
Yeah, I think you're really good at that. I think you're good for holding that space, and you approach people not knowing where they have come from, what challenges they've had. You're completely open. And I think that is what makes you unique.
Thank you.
Very special.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I know how special you are to me.
Oh, thank you. Wait, I have a few more questions.
I know you love golf.
I want to know if
I know how much you love to receive emotions.
This is not about me. This is about you. I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Just, I feel like it's hard to get to know somebody in this format. I've had, 10 plus years of knowing you, and a history which really fills in and adds a lot of color and richness. And it's hard to convey what that is and who you are in this format. I think you touch a lot of people with your energy and who you are and what you do. And I mean, I think the podcast is a great way to bring people together and really shine a light on what you do with women in particular. But being a mom and being the type of person that you are, how does that like shape the perspective of where you're coming from and trying to connect people and bring people together? And like, if you had 3 boys instead of 3 girls, would you be as as adamant about really focusing on women's issues? Or why don't you host an event for men, connect men together,
Men.
Yeah.
And empower men, empower him.
Right.
Yeah. I have to say that I don't think it matters if it's women, men, whoever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, who I am. I show up no matter
because
what.
you attract men and women.
Yeah, I love men.
Connect. Yeah.
I love men. I actually love working with men. And I think the thing is that they're so much easier. They're less complex than women, frankly. So, what happened when I launched Empower, and this isn't answering your question, but I will answer the question, was, whenever you basically, and this was before Me Too blew up, right? That I did Empower.
Right.
Um, it was that people want to put you in a box. They want you to have a niche. They want you to fill a void. And I think that for years I had been coaching all people, right? And then I started the women's group and they were my incubator. And then I think what ended up happening was that I was like, wow, when I look around where we live, there are so many overqualified, talented women that don't put their efforts to use in a way that ends up the reward ends up returning to them, right? So they invest all their energy into their children, and I'm talking about the women that are non-working, but I mean we have working women in our original women's group, and also even though Empower initially the women's groups were focused on female entrepreneurs that were launching, many of those women were working at the same time as they were launching their next thing. But the thing is, as a woman, it's very difficult to separate from your children, right? And
Yeah, you never do. As a
yeah,
mom, you never
and
do.
the other night, just an anecdote, like I went out, I was going to a concert and I was with like some women in the car, and the entire ride almost was focused on schools and where the kids were applying to college and what their SATs and ACTs and I said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I don't think they liked that I said it. However, the reason why I said it is that I want to spend time with you. I don't want to spend time talking about your kids.
Mhm.
We spend enough time talking about our children and energy focused on that. And it's not that I don't want to hear about it, because I do, because I think there's a time and a place, right? But
You know,
I think,
wait, you know what it is? It's the exact opposite thing that I learned when working with you as my coach. And I felt that I was defined by my career as a man, what I did defined who I was. And I realized I'm so much more than just my job.
mhm,
But I think what you're alluding to is women relate to being a mom, raising their kids, that their whole focus and value is on that role. And that role changes. Eventually the kids leave.
exactly.
Yeah,
And then once it leaves, then what do you have left? And
right.
is the remodel on your house, obviously you're a contractor, is the remodel on your house, or is the next house that you bought, real estate broker, just kidding. Is that where your focus is? And is that
Right.
what's going to bring you joy? And do you feel filled by that? Do you know who you are? And I think
Yeah.
so many women don't know who they are. And by the way, not just women, I think we're seeing it now. We're in our 50s, right? It's men too. And
Right.
and I love working with men. And it's interesting that you mention it, because in when was that? April 1st, I did this joke post that was like, I did this reflection. And after reflecting, I realized that I want to expand my practice. And I'm also going to be focused on men, and it's going to be called Empower Him. And I have to tell you, I did receive pushback on that. Like, well, women are behind. Why would you want to focus on men? Da, da, da. And I mean, I am equal opportunity. And by the way, I wouldn't have gotten where I was today if I didn't have strong men who supported me behind me. Like you and I have talked about Empower before and where it goes and how it continues to grow. And you've always been such a huge supporter of me. And obviously, why I asked you to be on the podcast.
Right. But wait, I'm just jealous because I think
So
what
you want me to
you're,
start like a men's group?
well, yeah, what you're promoting has so much value. I mean, I agree and understand the focus on women. I think it's it's necessary, it's valuable, but what you offer is really valuable for men too.
Yes. Um, I definitely. How do you see men stepping into that? Curiously,
That's a good question. I think it'd
do
be
you
a
think
lot
men would
harder.
commit?
Uh, yeah, I do.
Okay, so then how about we start with our small group of men?
I think it might be,
We have 3 founding members.
no, I think it would be a little awkward.
It'd be too close for comfort for me to
Yeah, a little too close
facilitate
for comfort.
it.
But I think, but what you offer though, I think transcends male, female, gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
So, but
What do you think about having a co-ed group? Kind of like YPO has. Well, but even within YPO, by the way, Young Presidents Organization, they have a men's group and a women's group.
yeah,
I mean, they do things together as couples, but then they separate. So, I mean,
I think the sense of community that you focus on, that you build, the values that you promote, the perspective that you offer people, because a lot of times people don't have that, and it takes someone like you to help guide them and show them those things, is really valuable.
I agree.
And I mean, I've
Thank
been
you for agreeing.
I've been on the periphery of it just through my wife, and being part of your friend group and seeing what you've done. I think it has a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to you is that original group and anybody who is part of our membership has
Wait, what does that what does that look like? What's this membership? Explain that to me. You have groups that people that subscribe.
yeah, so basically what I would say is it's an online version of the Witty group a bit, but
Okay.
it's less formal. So like what it is that once a month I go on live and people receive free coaching, right? That's pretty invaluable.
Yeah,
If I was offered that for $195 a year,
that's great.
I'd be pretty stoked.
Yeah,
Especially if they get to coach frankly with me. I don't mean to be like overconfident, but I mean people, it's not easy, right? So the second thing that they get is they get a free event once a year, the Gather event. And then the third thing they get is every month. So every third Wednesday of the month, they get free coaching for an hour. And every fourth Wednesday of the month, they get an expert call. So this last call was a woman who has an assessment tool that measures your growth blockers. Like, why are you not reaching your goals? And it's an algorithm assessment that is so spot on. Like, I'm certified in Myers-Briggs and Enneagram and all the, I have never seen an assessment tool like this that was so spot on for things that I'm currently working on. So it was like very interesting. So there's an expert. So like, it's either like somebody who's got a tool, something like that, or it's like a woman that's launched a business that you want to gain value from. She launched a franchise that's like super successful that was bought by Drybar. It's like, whoa, that's pretty cool,
that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is great, to be honest.
I like that.
Thank you.
So I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit better through this chat.
Are you kidding me? You know me so well. Just be quiet.
No, a little bit. I find it fascinating. You're fascinating, Michelle. You just are. You're a puzzle that I want to solve. What's your favorite color?
Green.
Oh, okay.
It's been my favorite color since I was younger. I like blue too. I like blue. I like green. I like pink. I like rose gold. Yeah.
Where do you
I like
see
a lot of colors. I wear a lot of colors, actually.
where do you see opportunity knocks in 3 years or 5 years? Are you going to still be interviewing, women entrepreneurs? Are you going to expand that?
I think that as I said in the very beginning, I am expanding to, right now, I've been being interviewed by men. Part of that is because my goal is to do a TED Talk in spring of next year, and that is on opportunities.
For men and women.
Pardon?
For men and women?
For men and women. I'm not doing a TED woman. My coach highly encouraged me not to do that because he said, you already have that audience. Like, you attract men too. You should actually do a TEDx, not TED. And so so I see interviewing more men. I have a list of people that I am targeting to interview. So I think this is an exciting time for me to determine really truly what's next for me. And I've been in an exponential growth mode. I'm owning more of my spiritual gifts that have been there, but they've been outliers. Like I don't talk to most people about it. Like the fact that we mentioned clairvoyance on the call, or the fact that I've been channeling the Akashic records. And I think the TED talk that I'm doing is not just your typical, like, I've been writing it, is the the 5 steps to create opportunities. It's built in with this metaphysics that I embody, and how I go about attracting connection, like you were mentioning.
Like a more holistic approach.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Uh-huh.
definitely steps. Yeah. Build your community, yes. But it's also like people's first take, you're always answering the question, like, but how? I don't have a community, but how? How do I build a community? Well, how curious are you? Do you really want to get to know people? Most people don't. Most people are so fine with like staying in their little nest egg and not growing.
Hmm. Well, that sounds great. I look forward to your TED Talk.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be there.
That's exciting.
Wherever it's going to end up being, because the way my coach works is that I have to finish writing it first and then I apply. So wherever that, my first draft will be done in November. So wherever I end up applying, because I've looked at a lot of places, not necessarily just in LA. Maybe it'll be a lot of times the bigger ones for TEDx are attached to university.
Mhm.
Like last year, May, there was one at UCLA that could have been good, but I was, again, going back to like, have you ever failed? It's not failure. I chose to focus on my daughter's graduation and her going to college. And like, it's about weighing options now. Like, it's not that I don't believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just smelling my tea. It's not that I don't believe that I can. It's like weird. I feel like at this stage in our lives, it's not that I believe that I can't do anything. It's more like when I'm going to do certain things.
And don't you think that you will be better off when that happens? Because you will be ready and you'll be present and you'll be ready for it. You'll be there.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like in our past lives, like we used to like shove everything in, like you gotta, and I mean, granted, like when you're in the corporate world, you're working towards some very specific deadlines for a reason. Like, it affects your overall operating profit, right? It's not that those things don't still exist. It's just a different way of choosing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I'm a huge supporter. Congratulations on everything. I think you're an amazing person. First and foremost, you're an amazing person.
Mm.
I mean, I think, what you do is great, but you're just a great person.
Mm. Well, I'm blessed to have been in the presence of you and your growth, and blessed that our families are really close with one another, and that you and your wife and your kids consistently you honestly are some of the most giving people, like from your heart, from like what you give.
Don't tell anybody, Michelle. Don't tell anybody. You're gonna ruin it.
Exactly. And with that, there's the bell.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time. And I can't thank you enough. And this has been an amazing interview and amazing questions. And
thank you. Congratulations.
I love you,
again.
Josh.
Love you, Michelle. Bye.
Okay.